I always believed that if I loved my family enough, one day they would finally love me back the same way. I was wrong. The morning of my wedding should have been the happiest day of my life. I stood in front of the mirror, wearing the dress I had saved for over 2 years to buy. My hands were shaking, not because I was nervous about marrying Daniel, but because I kept looking at my phone. No messages, no calls, no "we're on our way." My parents had promised they would be there. Even after years of treating me like I came second to my older brother, Ethan, they looked me in the eyes and said, "We'll never miss your wedding." I believed them. The ceremony was supposed to start at 2. By 1:45, every guest had arrived except 4 people: my mom, my dad, my brother, his wife. I kept telling myself they were stuck in traffic. Daniel gently squeezed my hand. "They'll come," he whispered. But even he didn't sound convinced. At exactly 2 o'clock, the music began. The wedding planner quietly asked if we should wait. I stared toward the church doors one last time. Nothing. My heart felt heavier than my wedding dress. "We'll start," I whispered. As I walked down the aisle, everyone smiled. I smiled too. But inside, something had already broken. Every empty chair reserved for my family felt louder than the music. When the ceremony ended, people hugged us, laughed, and celebrated. I kept checking my phone. Still nothing. 3 hours later, while guests were dancing, my mother finally texted. "Sorry, sweetheart. Something important came up with Ethan. We'll celebrate another time." That was it. No explanation, no apology, just 12 words. Later that evening, I discovered what had been so important. Ethan had decided to host a last-minute barbecue at his new house. My parents had chosen burgers over their daughter's wedding. I cried harder that night than I had during the ceremony. Daniel held me close and whispered, "One day they'll realize what they lost." I wanted to believe him, but what I didn't know that day was that my parents would only remember I existed after seeing something worth $135,000, and by then, I had already stopped waiting for their love. Growing up, everything in our house revolved around Ethan. If he earned a B, my parents celebrated. If I earned straight A's, they asked why I didn't score even higher. When he bought his first used car, they threw him a family dinner. When I earned a promotion at work, my mother simply replied, "That's nice." I spent years trying to earn attention that was freely given to someone else. Eventually, I stopped trying. Daniel became my family instead. He celebrated every little achievement. He remembered anniversaries. He surprised me with flowers on ordinary Tuesdays. For the first time in my life, I felt chosen. After our wedding, we worked harder than ever. I built my own marketing business from a tiny apartment. There were nights I slept only 4 hours. There were weekends without vacations. There were months when every dollar went back into growing the company. People only saw success. They never saw the sacrifices. 5 years later, everything changed. My business was thriving. Daniel had become a partner in the company. Together we achieved something we once believed was impossible. As a gift to ourselves, we bought a beautiful Porsche. It wasn't about showing off. It was proof that every painful moment had led somewhere. One Saturday morning, Daniel suggested driving it to a charity event downtown. I agreed. Neither of us expected my parents to be there. As soon as we parked, I heard my mother's voice. Oh my goodness. She rushed toward me with the biggest smile I had seen in years. "My beautiful daughter." Before I could react, she wrapped her arms around me. My father walked behind her, smiling proudly. "I always knew you'd do well." "Really?" Because they hadn't even known where I lived. Ethan slowly circled the Porsche. "Wow, this thing must have cost a fortune." Daniel answered politely. It was a reward after years of hard work. Suddenly everyone wanted pictures. Everyone wanted conversations. Everyone acted like we had always been close. My mother introduced me to strangers. "This is our daughter. We're so proud of her." Those words should have made me happy. Instead, they hurt more than being ignored, because they weren't proud of me. They were proud of what I owned. And in that moment, I finally understood the difference. A week later, my parents invited us to dinner. The first invitation in almost 6 years. Daniel looked at me. "You don't have to go." But I needed answers. Dinner felt strangely warm. Too warm. They laughed, asked questions, complimented our success. Then my father cleared his throat. "We've been thinking. Here it comes. Ethan's business hasn't been doing very well." I stayed silent. My mother smiled carefully. "You know, family helps family." There it was. The real reason. They weren't reconnecting because they missed me. They needed something. My father finally said it. We were wondering if you could loan Ethan $100,000. The room became silent. I looked around the table. Not one person asked how I had been. Not one person apologized for missing my wedding. Not one person admitted they had hurt me. They skipped straight to asking for money. I smiled gently. You know what I wanted most from you? They looked confused. I didn't want money. I didn't want gifts. I didn't even want approval. I just wanted my parents to show up on the most important day of my life. Nobody spoke. You missed my wedding because Ethan had a barbecue. My mother's eyes filled with tears. I've waited years for someone to simply say, "We're sorry." Silence, again. That told me everything. I stood up. I hope Ethan finds a way to rebuild his business. But I won't be solving problems for people who were never there when I needed them. Daniel stood beside me. Without another word, we walked away. A few weeks later, my parents tried calling. They sent birthday cards, holiday invitations, long messages saying they wanted another chance. For the first time in my life, I didn't answer immediately. Forgiveness takes honesty. Trust takes consistency. And love cannot appear only when success does. Months later, Daniel and I drove our Porsche along the coast during sunset. The car wasn't the reason I smiled. It never was. It simply reminded me how far I'd come. The little girl who once begged for her parents' attention had become a woman who no longer needed their approval. That was my real victory. Because sometimes, the greatest revenge isn't making people regret losing you. It's building a life so full of peace, love, and purpose that their absence no longer hurts. And if this story taught me anything, it's this. The people who truly love you don't wait until you're successful to celebrate you.